What's up, flappers? Today we revisit an old friend, Ningguang. With the recent changes to Geo alone, she has become even more powerful than before, so I won't waste your time in this video and look to the descriptions for timestamps as there's quite a bit to go over here. Firstly, we will cover her talent priority, then move into some quick tips and tricks, followed by constellation discussions, weapons, artifacts, and finish it off with some team suggestions. So without further ado, let's go. So for talents, Ningguang is almost always played as a burst DPS carry. There are times when people slot her to be an exclusive ult bot, which can also work. However, for the most part, Ningguang will be utilizing her normal and burst to do damage. Also, depending on what constellation you have Ningguang at, you may shift your talent priorities, but personally, I would highly recommend prioritizing everything to level 5 first, then go into her burst skill, then normal attack, then her jade screen will be last. If you are considering crowning Ningguang's talents, then her burst skill will definitely take priority. The reason being, Ningguang's entire kit is centered around burst damage and everything comes together in her burst skill. And also, if you are building Ningguang, I would say it's almost a necessity to build her with another Geo character, which makes getting her burst even easier. And of course, you'll see why as we go into Constellation, that her burst skill is definitely what you want to be prioritizing. Now to touch on some tips and tricks for Ningguang. If you have Ningguang at Constellation 2, this will allow your Jade Screen to reset its CD every time it's quote-unquote shattered. And what that means is when you are using your Jade Screen to shield damage and it breaks, you immediately get another Jade Screen to put down. However, when your burst skill consumes your Jade Screen, this Constellation will also refresh its CD. But do be careful, as the Jade Screen you are getting from the Constellation reset will only generate particles for Ningguang after the 6-second cooldown from the Constellation is done. This is not game breaking by any means, but it's something to keep note of when you are playing around her Constellation too. Also, when playing Ningguang, you may notice that she collects these floating stones behind her every time she auto attacks. These stones are what's called a star jade, and is actually a mechanic from her auto attack. They are treated as projectiles and can be used in two ways. The first being when Ningguang uses her charge attack, these star jades will all be fired off along with the charge attack to deal damage. The second being when Ningguang uses her burst skill, these star jades will be included into the sea of projectiles she fires off at the enemies. In essence, it's good practice to stack up your star jade prior to firing off your burst skill to get the most out of them. So for constellations, I'm not going to go into detail for them all, but I will tell you what you will need to get in order to get the most out of Ningguang without completely wailing to Constellation 6 for her. Through my time of playing and testing her, I have found that the most noticeable constellations are Constellations 1 and 2. What the first constellation does is that it's a function constellation. What I mean by that is that it adds an additional function to Ningguang's kit. These constellations are extremely powerful and are always worth getting, as without them you are missing out on parts of the character. So Constellation 1 for Ningguang turns her normal attacks into AoE when they hit. This is extremely useful as it gives her tools for mob clearing without the need for you to rely on your Jade Screen and burst skill. I would say if you are serious about running Ningguang as your main DPS, you should at the very least get her to Constellation 1. Now for Constellation 2, I would say is when you start pushing Ningguang into the role of an ult bot. The reason is Ningguang with and without her Jade Screen when ulting is very different. The Jade Screen adds quite a bit of damage to Ningguang's burst as it is consumed into gems when Ningguang uses her burst. So getting an extra Jade Screen allows Ningguang to be constantly protected from projectiles and always upkeep her passive talent strategic reserve while fighting. And of course, for the reasons always having a Jade Screen to be turned into gems while using your ult. Honestly saying, with just these two constellations, Ningguang is ready to be your DPS and smack booty cheeks. Her Constellation 4 is really a waste and I would not recommend people chase for it. This constellation is on par with how bad it is with Xiao's Constellation 4. And the only purpose it truly serves is to gatekeep you from her Constellation 6, which, holy smokeballs, turns her into an absolute machine that shoots rocks. So if you are going for her Constellation 4, you should be ready to fork out the extra cash to take her all the way to Constellation 6. If not, I just stop at Constellation 3, which gives her 3 talents for her burst skill, and that is very, very useful. Now, with that said, let's go into weapon options for Ningguang. Starting with the 4-star options, she has 3 options that I would suggest, and everything else is just subpar. The first being the Black Cliff Amulet. This is a powerful weapon both for the Abyss and just general mobbing. It has an incredible snowball effect and when fully stacked becomes a top tier option. However, it is useless against bosses. Second option you have is the Wit Sip. This is a balanced weapon that has a slightly more RNG aspect to it. For the first 2 stat, attack, increase, and elemental damage are both really good offensive buffs for Ningguang. However, the third buff with Elemental Mastery will only serve to increase crystallized shields, which isn't the best to get. Now, the third and final 4-star weapon is also the best 4-star weapon, and that of course is the Solar Pearl, which you get from the Battle Pass. This weapon allows you to build crit damage headpiece, which seals the deal for Ningguang main DPS. Now for 5-star weapons, even though there have been debates, I still think the Memory of Dust is her best in slot weapon, followed by Lost Prayers, and finally the Skyward Atlas. And that's it for the weapons. Let's move on to the artifacts. So for Ningguang's artifacts, it's really straightforward. If you are under Constellation 6, I would say go for the 2-piece Archaic Petra and 2-piece Gladiator. If you are at Constellation 6, switch to using the 2-piece Archaic Petra and 2-piece Noblesse Oblige. The reason for this is because as you get constellations for Ningguang, everything is building up to her burst skill, being the complete focus of her kit. However, if you do not have C6, you will still be missing out on that final key to turning into a machine gun. The Gladiator 2-piece effect will scale with not only her auto attacks, but her elemental skill as well, and her burst skill. So go with this until you can get her to Constellation 6. Artifact main stats should be attack percentage sands, geo damage cup, and crit rate or crit damage headpiece according to your weapon. Substats for Ningguang should be crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, and then energy recharge, as the ideal situation is if you can spam out her burst skill on cooldown. So let's go over some teams I suggest you to run her with. Team 1 is a free-to-play friendly team with Ningguang as your main DPS, Official Support DPS, Noelle Pseudo Healer, and Xingqiu Elemental Support. This team is a Geo Resonance team that has 2 off-field DPS supports to help Ningguang deal more damage. Everything is stacked onto Ningguang and is a very damage-centric team. For Xingqiu, not only does he help with damage, but also because we have a Pseudo Healer in Noelle, Xingqiu also serves to add a bit more healing to the team. Now, Team 2 is Ningguang main DPS, Albedo Support DPS, Bennett Healer, and Xingqiu Elemental Support. Following the concept from the first team, this is a great team to run for Ningguang if you have Albedo here. The two are top tier when it comes to Geo synergy, and I would go as far as saying they are the best Geo pairing to have, even beating out Ningguang and Zhongli. Albedo provides a huge amount of damage support with Ningguang, and for anyone looking to build the perfect Ningguang Geo team, this is definitely one of them. Team 3 is Ningguang main DPS, Zhongli support DPS, Bennett healer, and Venti elemental support. This is a pay-to-win team and is a very powerful one. Unlike other pay-to-win teams, you only need Venti and Zhongli, so you don't really need 4 5-star to make this happen. This team focuses around alt spams to deal with enemy threats, and with Bennett to boost all these already insanely high scaling alts, you will be demolishing everything with ease. If you have Zhongli and Venti, do give this team a try. And that's it for this video. I thank you all for watching, and remember to subscribe if this video has helped you. So until our next video, I urge you all to stay safe and peace.